One of the biggest holes in a young person's high school education may be navigating their own financial life. But a partnership between a local Big Brothers Big Sisters chapter and Navy Federal Credit Union is trying to fill in that gap. Here to talk about this new program is Paula Shell. She's president and CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Northwest Florida. And Jennifer McFarren, manager of community and education outreach at Navy Federal Credit Union. And Jennifer is also a big sister. I asked her to tell me about how the joint project got started.
So, Bob, a little bit of the background there is that, I think, as you know, we've been partnering with Big Brothers Big Sisters in a variety of different ways and realized that we had a unique opportunity to be very specific and intentional about leveraging the incredible expertise of our team members in specifically and strategically partnering with Big Brothers Big Sisters to focus in on unique ways to do financial education for our littles. So had a great conversation with Paula and the leadership team, spent some time really designing the outline and the framework of the training and moved pretty quickly to implement it.
And Paula, was this pretty much embraced by Big Brothers Big Sisters? And did you find a lot of people saying, yeah, sign me up?
Yeah, it was definitely something that has been on our radar for a long time. I mean, being able to provide our littles with this kind of input and training and just opening their eyes to different things, of course, through the lens of the help and support with their big brother or big sister was just a perfect match, honestly. We selected the older littles in our program, so those middle and high school students with this partnership, especially during this time of COVID and, having to do things virtually. It was a good fit. I mean, Navy Federal is a partner that can pivot at the drop of a hat, wherever things need to take place. And so we were very blessed that they were able to keep our train moving, so to speak, at Big Brothers Big Sisters and not miss a beat, and being able to provide something to our matches during this time where we're not getting together. And so it was just a perfect fit.
Is there a need for this type of education? Is this something that maybe, schools aren't hitting enough with young people?
I think so. I think that anything that we can do to kind of layer with what they're getting at school. Some of our littles are even doing virtual school. So it just made sense. And, even through trainings like this, they're getting those specific things with financial literacy training, but it also opens the doors for the littles to learn other things and to help grow their relationship with their big brother or big sister. It just makes sense, honestly.
Bob, I would add that from a personal perspective, I think back when my little Kiana, who is now 22, we've been together for almost 12 years. I think about those pivotal points in our relationship. Owning her first car, graduating from high school and thinking about pursuing post-secondary education, now living on her own, running her own apartment. I think about all those critical life milestones and certainly would have appreciated, I think, a formal avenue of training for her and I to sit together. But I also think that, as our bigs continue navigating our littles through those milestones, not only does this training provide concrete tools to be able to navigate those, it really opens up the door to build trust and weave that into their relationships so that it's a foundational part of how they grow and learn together.
That's a good point. I shared with Jennifer and her team a couple weeks ago after this last training that we had a big sister that reached out and said, "Thank you so much for that." She said, "We're a fairly new match and we were struggling with her little was very shy and conversations were hard and difficult to manage." She shared with us that through this training and participating, it opened her little up to speaking and talking. It kind of just set them on a good path. And so, just for something as simple as this, now their conversation is a lot easier between each other.
Can you talk about any specific items that are part of this training?
So one of the things I love about the way that our instructional designers put together the program, Bob, is they did it in a really neat way that's sequential and things layer on top of each other. But they're also done in a way where if a big or little couldn't make the previous session, they're not missing out. So we've started the first session with kind of the foundational basics of earning and managing your money. How do you earn money? How, kind of what are the options in terms of spending, saving, investing? What do you do with your money? And then from there, the next session is on saving and growing your money, really the mechanics of how you do that, savings accounts, understanding interest, the basics of investing. And then from there, we move on to spending your money. What are the wise choices? What are the difference between credit and debit cards, loan basics, things of that nature? And then finally closing out with protecting your money, that final but really important element with other components like identity theft, prevention of identity theft, things of that nature.
Have the bigs come back to you, Paul, and said, you know what, I learned something too?
They have. And actually, I've been sitting on, we've had one so far back in February, and then we have our next one in June, and then we have one in August and then October. So that's kind of the year. And I've been participating with my little. And so, of course, I'm sitting here at home. She's at home. We've got our cell phones going back and forth. And I'll go, did you catch that? So we're communicating back and forth as we're listening. And the good thing about it is, they're very good to provide visuals for the littles because our littles are very visual. So if you see along the continuum about, if you save money, a certain amount here, where it can end up to benefit you. We also provide our littles an incentive for those that do come on and capture the content. But our bigs have also emailed us and said, thank you for doing that. I've learned a lot and it really has helped me in working with my littles. So yeah, and I think as adults, if we hear these things over and over again, it kind of helps us as well. So it's a win-win. It's encouraging to me, even that a lot of the littles that were on the call, the first one, their big wasn't there. So at least that little was encouraged to come and listen. And what I really enjoyed about it, they would ask them questions. So the kids got to participate. So they're just not sitting there listening to somebody lecture, which is very, to hold their attention is one thing that I think is really important. So they got to answer questions and they got to participate, and an hour-long session goes by just like that. And they walked away learning something.
I thought it was a wonderful thing because I mean, my father was a banker. He was a banker his entire life. So I had balancing a checkbook in my genes, but I never learned a thing about it in any schooling. So this seems like a wonderful thing for anyone.
It is. Our next one is going to be virtual as well. And then it's our hope that the last two can be in person at our office. So we're excited about that.
Is this part of Navy Federal's Beyond School Walls program that's been around for a few years, or is this just something different? And if so, tell us about Beyond School Walls.
Sure. Thank you for asking that, Bob. So I consider this kind of an extra element of our collaboration with Big Brothers Big Sisters. We certainly do thread in a few components around financial education to that program, but I think this is powerful in that it's standalone for our community-based bigs and littles. Our Beyond School Walls program is a program that we started in collaboration with Big Brothers Big Sisters. They came to us and a number of other large employers in the community about 5 years ago. We are in our third cohort now. So we work in collaboration again with Big Brothers Big Sisters and the school district to take a cohort of about 30 littles who are in their junior year of high school. And we pair them up with a big here at Navy Federal that they spend the next 2 years with. And the goal is really to ensure that they are successful in their post-high school plans, regardless of what that may look like, going on to pursue post-secondary education, career and technical education, going into the military, or coming to work, hopefully with us here at Navy Federal, if that's of interest to them. But again, just have an incredible opportunity to pair these bigs and littles together once a month to really expose them to what opportunities are like in a corporate atmosphere, to connect them with a big who themselves has navigated through that journey from high school to post-high school success, and really to celebrate and encourage them along the way in those last 2 pivotal years of their high school experience.
We're teaching these kids some very solid foundation information, and they need it. I got together with my little yesterday, and we started hashing out some of these things that we've learned over these last few months. And this session came up for her because she's that age. And so we're talking about the future and what does that look like for her?
I will share, Bob, that mentorship and truly the belief in the impact of mentorship is something that we hold very true and dear internally here at Navy Federal in terms of the way we invest and develop our team members and our leaders. And we know that it's true in community-based programs like our collaboration with Big Brothers, Big Sisters as well. We see the reciprocity in these partnerships that we have when we hear our team members who volunteer as bigs through our School to Work or Beyond School Walls program, in the community-based mentoring program, serving on the board. We just always have an incredible experience where we really see some impactful outcomes through that relationship and collaboration with Big Brothers, Big Sisters. So we're grateful as well.
Jennifer McFarren is Manager of Community and Education Outreach at Navy Federal Credit Union, and Paula Shell is the President and CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Northwest Florida. Still to come, we'll listen again to our conversation with a groundbreaking animator who helped bring a wide variety of characters to life on Saturday morning, from Winky Dink to the Beatles. That's next on The Best of Our Knowledge. Got any questions or comments about The Best of Our Knowledge? Send them in. Our email address is knowledge@wamc.org. And if you'd like to listen to this or any past programs again, you can find them online at our flagship station's website. Just go to wamc.org and click on the programs link. And while you're there, subscribe to the Best of Our Knowledge's podcast or download the WAMC radio app to listen on demand anytime, any place. This is The Best of Our Knowledge. I'm Bob Barrett. Earlier this year, people of a certain age, and I'm part of that group, lost an important part of their childhood. Ron Campbell passed away in Phoenix, where he made his home. Beginning in the late 1950s in his native Australia, Campbell had a 50-year career as an animator and director of some of the most iconic TV shows that ever graced a Saturday morning, from Popeye and Crazy Cat to DuckTales and Rugrats. In the 60s, he became involved with a wildly popular animated show starring the Beatles, and that led him to working on the movie Yellow Submarine. After retiring, Ron Campbell traveled around the world, bringing his work from those days to various art galleries. I spoke with Ron early last year and asked how he got his start in the business.
I got into the business actually as a 7-year-old, that began a lifetime of grim determination in a country where there was no industry, no animation industry at all. But fortunately, when I came out of art school, television had just arrived in Australia, and for the first time there was a demand for animation to make television commercials. So I was able to walk around the streets of Sydney pretending I knew how to make animated television commercials. And by doing, I learned.
And how did you get further into the business? Doing the commercials, I imagine you must have been good at it.
Well, I was apparently able to do it to the satisfaction of the advertising agencies. And then an American company came snooping around in Australia looking for production help. That company was King Features of New York. And they brought with them the possibility of contracts to make Popeye cartoons, other cartoons like Crazy Cat and Beetle Bailey. And I found myself doing that for King Features, and that worked out okay. I was able to deliver on budget and on time. Then I got a telephone call in the middle of the night I was in Sydney, and I was getting the call from New York, Al Brodax of King Features, and he said, Ron, we've just sold a show for next season. We'd like you to direct all the episodes we plan to produce in Australia. Would you be interested? And I said, oh, absolutely, Al. What's the show? And he said, it's the Beatles. And I stopped and, Beatles? Al, I said, insects make terrible characters for children's television. He said, no, it's the Beatles, the rock and roll group sweeping the nation, you know. And I'd only barely heard of them, I'm afraid. But I quickly learned who the Beatles were.
Well, you'd already done Beetle Bailey, so you had half of it.
Yes, right. That's true.
So how involved were the Beatles involved at all in this?
Well, they were involved in a very, very significant way, and also utterly uninvolved. The significant way, of course, was that they gave us the right to use their music, which was everything. And then they went away and did their music thing, and we went away and did our cartoon thing. And so we had an enormously successful television show, thanks to their music. And it was a fun show, and children all over America loved the show. And now that I'm doing art shows, I'm meeting that audience in person, and I am amazed at how many millions of people, millions of Americans, still think back to that happy time when they were watching the Beatles cartoon television show. Sometimes it had like a 67 share. That meant every 100 TV sets that were turned on during that time period, 67 of them were watching the Beatles TV cartoon show. An amazing thing that could never happen today.
I will confess right now that one of those TVs was in my living room. I watched it every week. Yep.
See, wherever I go, I meet people who were little children at that time watching that show. It's amazing.
I'm interested in learning. You said you were directing the show. How does one direct a cartoon?
Well, in those days, it meant a lot more than it does now, actually. In those days, it meant I decided how many people were to be employed, who was to be employed, how did the workflow go. I did the storyboards. New York sent me a voice track and a script, and I delivered to them a finished film. And I was responsible for everything. That's how you directed a show then. And I was 24 years old. How did I have the knowledge to do that? I don't know. I look back, somehow I did, you know, and I think it was because I taught myself, you know.
From that, how did you go from that to getting involved in their movie?
Oh, the movie was different. After the success of the Beatles, I did another TV show called Cool McCool for King Features. And then I started getting a lot of job offers from the United States. So I packed my beautiful wife up and my lovely little 3-year-old daughter, and we flew across the Pacific and we joined the American animation industry. I worked for a year for Hanna-Barbera, and then I started my own company. And while helping out on the first season of Scooby-Doo, doing storyboards and animating a show you might have heard of called George of the Jungle and Tom Slick and Super Chicken.
These are amazing shows you're bringing up right now. These are great.
Yeah, I get another telephone call from New York. No, actually, I'm sorry, not New York. Al was in London when he called me. And he told me that there was a lot of problems in the production of the film they were making called The Yellow Submarine, and that they needed character animation between the songs, and they needed a lot of help. Could I help out? And I was working with a very good animator at that time, and a very close personal friend of mine. His name was Dwayne Crowther. I agreed, and Dwayne agreed to help out with this. And so we took on the task of doing about 12 minutes of the animation of The Yellow Submarine, just the animation. They sent the scenes to us in Hollywood, and Dwayne and I animated the scenes with a few assistant animators helping us. And we send all the pencil drawings back to London, where they inked and painted them and painted the backgrounds, filmed them, and slipped the scenes into the movie where they belonged. We did about 12 minutes, just 12 minutes of the film. We're not responsible for the magnificent design and everything that's really good in the film, except we did provide them with some great character animation on the Blue Meanies and Max the assistant and the Nowhere Man. We did about 12 minutes, as I say, and it took us 8 months to do.
Wow.
So, all of the magnificent stuff on the Yellow Submarine was really done in London by TVC, by Heinz Edelman and all the directors in London. They did a marvelous job on the film, and the film has stood the test of time. It was released just a couple of years ago to enormous success again. Nobody has ever watched that film without being influenced by it in some way.
I want to go back to a show that might have been one of the first things you worked on. I'm not sure. I remember it as a kid. Is Winky Dink and You? It says you worked on that.
You're going to mention Winky Dink? Oh my goodness!
Not many people will go from the Beatles to Winky Dink, I'll tell you.
I have to tell you, of all of the shows that I've worked on, and I've given 10 years of my life to the Smurfs and 10 years of my life to Rugrats, and you mentioned Winky Dink.
Well, that's because I was part animator in that show, too. The kids had to draw on the screen.
Yeah, you did, yes. It was a real strange thing, which was kind of strangely popular with small children. And sometimes it got the children into trouble with their parents because they didn't get the screen. They actually drew directly onto the TV set.
I can confirm.
So, what can I say about Winky Dink? It was just a little sideways thing that I forgot all about until the computer comes along and tells everybody what you did, even things that you forgot you even did,
Well, it sounds like you also were very involved in the creation of Scooby-Doo, and I can't think of many cartoon characters more popular than that in the U.S.
Well, I was just involved really in the opening scene of it, and there was some preamble stuff the year before, doing storyboards on the very first season, and then later on in the 70s, I subcontracted a few episodes for Hanna-Barbera, where my studio was across the road from Hanna-Barbera, and Bill Hanna used to send subcontract stuff to Overflow Production to my studio.
Does the job that you started doing even exist anymore? Hand animation I'm talking about.
Oh, I see, yes. Virtually no, it doesn't exist anymore. Right now, if you look at feature films that are generated by computers, they're just technically so far advanced from anything that can be done by hand. On the other hand, I'm not sure that the computers have been helpful for television entertainment for children, but there is a charm that hand-drawn animation brings to the imagery that computers cannot compete with. But there are many things the computer can do that no hand-drawn animation could even remotely come near. So it's like a different medium altogether. And right now, hand-drawn animation is not that popular. It will come back, I know, because it does have a charm that no computer can touch.
Ron Campbell spent 50 years as an artist, animator, and director. He passed away in January at the age of 81. You can still see his work and those gallery exhibits online at BeatlesCartoonArtShow.com. The universe is just about the biggest chemistry set you'll ever find, and that's the topic of today's Academic Minute.
How are the different elements of the universe produced? I'm Dr. Lynn Pascarella, president of the Association of American Colleges and Universities. And today on the Academic Minute, Nick Sterling, associate professor of physics, explores a fossil record of stars to find out.
The details of the chemical evolution of the universe, including which elements are formed in what types of stars, is an active area of astrophysics research. The universe transformed from a composition of nearly pure hydrogen and helium just after the Big Bang to the present-day content that includes about 2% heavier elements, including familiar ones like oxygen, carbon, and nitrogen. Elements up to iron are formed by nuclear fusion in the burning hearts of stars, and their origins are relatively well understood. In contrast, many questions remain regarding the production of elements heavier than zinc, which are created by neutron captures onto iron peak nuclei in the interiors of red giant stars and in cataclysmic collisions between neutron stars. Like forensic scientists, astronomers investigate stellar deaths to learn details of nucleosynthesis and galaxies' evolutionary histories. Our team utilizes high-resolution near-infrared spectroscopy of planetary nebulae, the ejecta of dying low-mass stars, to investigate the nucleosynthesis of heavy elements in low-mass giant stars. This area of research combines observational astronomy with theoretical and experimental studies of atomic processes, such as photonization and electron impact excitation needed to understand the spectra of astrophysical objects. We recently used the 8.1-meter Gemini South telescope in Chile to determine the abundances of transiron elements, such as rubidium, krypton, and tellurium in planetary nebulae in low-mass galaxies that orbit the Milky Way. The observations were carried out in late 2020 and are currently under analysis. Despite the rarity of these elements, their abundances are sensitive probes of the physics of red giant stars and provide a fossil record that can reveal the evolution and star formation histories of galaxies.
That was Nick Sterling of the University of West Georgia. You can find this, other segments, and more information about the professors at academicminute.org.
The Academic Minute is a production of WAMC Northeast Public Radio in partnership with the Association of American Colleges and Universities. That's all the time we have for this week's program. If you'd like to listen again, join us online at our flagship station's website. Go to WAMC.org and click on the programs link. While you're there, subscribe to our podcast or any of the other WAMC or National Productions podcasts. And if you have any questions or comments about the program, send them in. Our email address is knowledge@WAMC.org, and you can find us on Twitter at TBOOKnowledge. I'm Bob Barrett. Be sure to join us next time for another edition of The Best of Our Knowledge.
Bob Barrett is producer of The Best of Our Knowledge. Dr. Alan Chartock is executive producer. The Best of Our Knowledge is a production of WAMC Radio's National Productions, which is solely responsible for its content. Hear more at WAMC.org.